Assalamualaikum and hi. We are from Group 12. We'll be presenting our answers. First and foremost, you need to read the situation given. Alright. There are two questions, and the first one is, we need to discuss whether Bongkok and Joko can claim any defense in the above situation. And the second one is, we need to discuss Bapa and Hani's criminal liabilities, if any. Introduction. The situation above told us about Bongkok. A hunchback had lifted Adik on his back and threw him on the ground. Adik was grievously hurt and died from hemorrhage. The next situation is regarding to the accused Joko, who had an argument with his friend Parjo, but then things become worse when Joko grabbed a knife and stabbed Parjo for several times until he died. Next, Bapa had committed an offence when he took someone else's bricks, which belongs to Bob from Bob's construction, for his own use. And the last situation is about Hani, who had misdialed Sexy's number and his call was answered by Cikgu. Cikgu was shocked by what Hadi's sayings and had to spend a week in a hospital because of a minor heart attack. Based on all the situation above, there are 4 issues that can be found.
First issue. The issue is whether Bongkok can raise defense of provocation that defined under Exception 1 of Section 300 for causing death of Adik and reduce the punishment to Section 304 of the Penal Code.
Law. Exception 1 of Section 300 of the Penal Code stated that culpable homicide is not murder if the offender whilst deprived of the power of self-control by grave and sudden provocation causes the death of the person who gave the provocation or causes the death of any other person by mistake or accident. There are 5 elements. First, the provocation must be grave and sudden in the case of Tian Sui Ong versus Pipi. Second one, there must be a link between the provocation and the killing. We can refer to the case of Muhammad Ali bin Johari versus Pipi. Third one, there must be no cooling period as we can refer to the case of Chong Ti versus Pipi. The fourth one, there must be retaliation or proportionality as we can refer to the case of A.G. Fosilen versus Don John Pereira. And the last one, the application of reasonable man test as we can refer to the case of Lawrence Tukan versus PP and the case KM Nanavati versus State of Maharashtra. Application. First one, provocation must be grave and sudden. When Ade uttered the words, "Can I have a ride on your back, Mr. Camel?" to Bongkok, it is automatically has risen up Bongkok's anger after some children kept made fun of his physical features as Ade assumed the ride on Bongkok's back was exactly a camel. Therefore, Bongkok thought Adik deliberately equalized his physical feature as same with the animal. Second, there must be a link between the provocation and the killing. Bongkok instantly did such acts until Adik suffered severe injuries and died at that moment after Adik kept made fun his physical feature. Therefore, the provocations that received by Bongkok were continuously and very harsh as Bongkok was really an animal because having hunchback like camel. This has crossed the line and made Bongkok has lost his self-control and killed Adik at the moment. Next, there must be no cooling period. If the provocations not too worse, Adik would stay alive until certain times, as Bongkok thought they were merely joking and did not take it serious until Bongkok came to his unexpected senses, thought they would cross the line and kill Adik in maybe 2 or 3 days later. Furthermore, there must be retaliation or proportionality. The act of the children that taunted him about his deformity and Adik whispered harsh words had caused Bongkok mad. This act of Tias is considered as a provocation and had caused Bongkok whip Adik around. This eventually had killed Adik as his head was struck on the concrete path, fracturing his skull. This regarded as retaliation to what Adik had done. Lastly, the application of reasonable man test. If the reasonable man, which suffered abnormal physical same with the accused, he might do the same thing with Bongkok. This is because they made him feel humiliated for having the flaws, as the accused had already suffered the pain from their diseases, then someone made fun of him. So, how could this matter can be considered at all aspects? It is just unfair to them. So, there was the reason why Bongkok being so aggressive until killed Adik.
As conclusion, Bongkok had fulfilled all the elements in this Exception 1. We can say that Bongkok can raise defense on himself under defense of provocation that defined under Exception 1 of Section 300. This defense will mitigate his punishment to Section 304 of the Penal Code, where he whether caught imprisonment for a term which may extend to 30 years and shall also be liable to fine or imprisonment for a term which may extend to 10 years or with fine or with both.
Next, we move to the second issue, whether Joko can invoke the defense of exception 4 in special exception to section 300 of the Penal Code.
There are three elements that must be fulfilled to invoke the defense of exception 4 in special exception to section 300. The first element is sudden fight. For the definition of sudden fight, you may refer to the case of Bhagwan Munjaji Paude against State of Maharashtra and the case of Han Raj Singh against Emperor. This element is further supported with the case of SIS against State of Punjab. Next, for the second element, there must be an absence of premeditation. You may refer to the case of Mohammed Kunjo against Public Prosecutor and Kirpal Singh against State of Punjab. For the third element is there must be no undue advantage taken by the accused. You may refer to the case Mohammed Kunjo against Public Prosecutor for the definition of undue advantage. So we move to the next part, which is application. The first element is sudden fight. Sudden quarrel broke out between Joko and Parjo when they were drinking and playing card. Joko grabbed the knife that lying on the table and stabbed Parjo for several times. Even though Parjo not used or attempted use of violence in his part against Joko, suddenly quarrel that broke out between both of them is sufficient to show that the element of sudden fight was established. For the second element, which is absence of premeditation, Joko was not made any pre-planning to cause death of Parjo. The knife that was using as a tool to cause bodily injury and death of Parjo was lying on the table and not prepared by Joko. So, for the last element, which is no undue advantage taken by the accused, Joko stabbed Parjo for several times. When Parjo was stabbed by Joko, he was not armed. The weapon used by the accused and the deceased is not proportionate. Joko was acted in cruel and unusual manner.
In conclusion, Joko cannot raise the defense of exception 4 in special exception to section 300 of the Penal Code because he was not fulfill the third element of this exception. He will be liable for the offence of murder in section 300 of the Penal Code, and he will be punished with the punishment that had been prescribed in section 302 of the Penal Code, which is the death penalty.
For the next issue, we are going to look whether Bapa is liable for the offence of theft under section 378 of the Penal Code.
For law, these are the elements to constitute the offence of theft and also some cases to prove that the defendant is liable for the offence.
Next, we are going to apply the law into the situation of Bapa. For the first element, which is intention to take dishonestly. In this situation, Bapa did have intention to cause wrongful gain to him and also wrongful loss to Bob. This can be proved when he took a lorry to Bob construction site and also took the bricks to keep the bricks let it keep going for a couple of days. When Bapa took the bricks from Bob, this can give him wrongful gain where he may continue his work to build the building and also wrongful loss to Bob. By looking at this situation, it can be shown that Bapa had fulfilled the first element, which is the intention to take dishonestly. For the second element, which is taking the property out of the possession. In this situation, the question arises is whether Bapa's intention to let Bob have the bricks back in a day or two can exclude him from the liability for the offence of theft. In this case, Bapa still liable for the offence of theft. This is because, based on the case on the above, shows that temporary deprivation is sufficient to constitute the offence. He is still guilty whether his real intention was to let Bob have the bricks back or to keep the bricks to himself permanently. So, by looking at this, Bapa fulfilled the second element, which is taking the property out of the possession. For the third element, which is the property must be in possession of another. Applying the case into the situation of Bapa, it can be looked that Bapa's action to take movable property, which is the brick, out of the possession of Bob, does satisfy the requirement for this element. Thus, this shows that Bapa is guilty and he fulfilled the element of property must be in possession of another. For the fourth element, there must be no consent to taking. In this situation, there was no consent given to Bapa whether he can take the bricks from Bob. Bapa also did not sure whether Bob gave him the permission to take the bricks or not. The absence of consent can be proven when Raden reported the action that had been done by Bapa to Bob, then Bob reported it to the police station. In this situation, if Bob did give his consent to Bapa, then he will never report the case to the police. He will also never know the incident where Bapa took his bricks if Raden did not report to him. Even if Bapa said that Bob consented his act, but there is no proof to show that he did so. This shows that Bapa fulfilled the elements of there must be no consent to taking. The last element is moving the property out of possession. In this situation, Bapa's act did move the property out of possession. This can be shown when Bapa took his lorry to Bob's construction site and removed the bricks there. Based on the case above, Bapa's act will be considered as theft as soon as he started to remove the bricks from the construction site. He also did have intention to move the bricks in order to give him enough bricks for supply for 2 days to ensure that he can continue his work. This shows that Bapa fulfilled the last element, which is moving the property out of the possession. In conclusion, Bapa is liable for the offence of theft under section 378 of the Penal Code, and he will be punished with the punishment that had been prescribed under section 378, which is imprisonment for 7 years or fine.
The fourth issue is whether Honi will be liable for the offence of causing grievous hurt under section 320 of the Penal Code.
Section 320 of the Penal Code. The following kinds of hurt only are designated as grievous. First, emasculation. Second, permanent privation of the sight of either eye. Third, permanent privation of the hearing of either ear. Privation of any member or joint. Destruction or permanent impairing of the powers of any member or joint. Permanent disfiguration of the head or face. Fracture or dislocation of a bone. Any hurt which endanger life or which causes the sufferer to be, during the space of 10 days, in severe bodily pain or unable to follow his ordinary pursuits. The first element, constitute any grievous hurt under section 320, in the case of Queen Emperor against Vastachela and in the case of Mahinder Singh against State of Punjab. The second element, there must be action that caused grievous hurt, in the case of Ramla against State of Rajasthan. The third element, the hurt caused must be grievous, in the case of Sahad against Haji Ibrahim. Fourth element, intention to cause grievous hurt. And the fifth element, the accused must has knowledge that his act is likely to cause grievous hurt. Application. The first element, constitute any grievous hurt under section 320. Honi had caused Cikgu suffered heart attack and had to spend a week in hospital. This grievous hurt stated in section 320 clause H of the Penal Code that any hurt which endangers life or which causes the sufferer to be, during the space of 10 days, in severe bodily pain or unable to follow his ordinary pursuits. The second element, there must be an action that caused grievous hurt. Due to the words, "I know where you live and I am on my way around to have kinky sex you will not forget forever," Cikgu had suffered a heart attack. Honi wants to call Sexy the prostitute, but he misdialed Cikgu's number and said the words that caused grievous hurt to Cikgu. The act is sufficient to show to the court that Honi was acted to cause grievous hurt against Cikgu. The third element, the hurt caused must be grievous. Cikgu suffered heart attack and it is a vital part of human being which endangers her life and severe bodily pain and had to spend a week in hospital due to the words said by Honi. The fourth element, intention to cause grievous hurt. In this case, we can say that Honi have no intention to cause grievous hurt to Cikgu because he wants to call Sexy but he misdialed Cikgu's number, so he has no intention to say that kind of words to Cikgu. The fifth element, the accused must has knowledge that his act is likely to cause grievous hurt. Honi have no knowledge that the act he has done can cause grievous hurt to Cikgu because he is in intoxication and he wants to say that word to Sexy, the prostitute, not to Cikgu. The words that he say is normal for a prostitute, so it will not causing grievous hurt to Sexy, but because of his mistake, he misdialed Cikgu's number and said that harsh words and caused minor heart attack to Cikgu.
As a conclusion, Honi will not liable for the offence of causing grievous hurt under section 320 of the Penal Code because he has not fulfilled the elements to constitute grievous hurt to other person.
For the conclusion, last but not least, from the first situation, it can be concluded as Bongkok has the right to raise defence of provocation because he had fulfilled the elements in exception 1 of section 300 of the Penal Code, and the defence will mitigate the punishment to section 304. Although Bongkok is the reason of Adik's death, but Adik also the one who started the incident by provoking Bongkok. In the situation of Joko, he is liable for the offence of murder under section 300 of the Penal Code, as well as Bapa, who is liable for the offence of theft under section 378 of the Penal Code. In contrast, Hadi is not liable for the offence of causing grievous hurt to Cikgu, as he did not have the intention or knowledge that he had misdialed the number until causing the Cikgu to suffer from a minor heart attack. Justice consists not in being neutral between right and wrong, but in finding out the right and upholding it, wherever found against the wrong, and when there is law, there is justice.